Welcome to Talking Heads on USA Global TV, starring the one and only wonderful Dr. Jacqueline. It's a prestigious place where world-class influencers and experts meet, and where you'll find the most trusted advisors and coaches for all things in life and business. Visit usaglobaltv.com to sign up for our newsletter, get the value you need, and be first in line to learn about events and giveaways and other valuable content. Connect with us. Email Dr. Jacqueline at usaglobaltv.com to talk about how you can become part of USA Global TV. That's USA Global TV, where the doctor is always in.
Hi, red.olaughlin here, again on Talking Heads program on the USA Global TV and Radio Network. Thank you again, Dr. Jacqueline. Really appreciate this opportunity. We've been talking the last couple of weeks about fat management, and fat management is one of those. Let's see if I can get the slide up here. How do I do that? There we go. Let's go back one slide. Okay, so we just took care of the introduction. Disclaimer, I'm a researcher. I have nothing to do with the medical industry. I have nothing to do with any pharmaceutical company, never have. I got 5 different degrees. My first love was in chemistry. I love to research the human body at the cellular level. I look for cause and effect relationships, treat a cause, fix a problem. Treat a symptom, and you'll always be treating a symptom. So as you look at things, if you figure out what causes this to happen, maybe you can stop it from happening. But in regards to the topic that we're covering, fat management, what if 15 things cause something to happen? Well, that means you need to take 15 actions to fix it. You just can't fix one thing. It's like Alzheimer's. There's 7 or 8 different pathways for Alzheimer's. You fix one, that doesn't mean the others are going to stop. It just means that you've only addressed one. How many times have people, or maybe you take a pill for something, and then all of a sudden 6 months, 8 months, a year later, the pill is not as effective as it was. Well, it's because our bodies adapt and there's other things that happen. Well, the same thing happens as we grow older. Our ability to store fat seems to be one of the prime directives of our life, that no matter what we do, it's there. But we're talking about fat management on this program, and we said that we'll talk about it. Let's talk about what causes fat to go into a fat cell. Today, we're talking about what causes fat to come out of a fat cell. Last week's show, if you missed that one, please go onto YouTube on USA Global TV and Radio, and you'll be able to find the show and learn what causes fat to be shoved into that fat cell. Now we're talking about let's get it out of the fat cell. How do we do that? Next week, we're going to talk about what causes fat to burn, and then the following week, what stops fat from burning. And then the last week, we'll talk about some really interesting topics with regard to diet and things that you may never have thought of before. So let's go ahead and bounce now to the next slide. And wrong one. What causes fat to come out of a fat cell? Well, when something happens, there's a definite result of other things in front of that happening. And when we look at the things, and I'm going to go through this list in each detail of the things I told you last week, when we see this causes something to happen, then if you stop that cause, then we've done something. So we need to reverse what caused that thing to happen in the beginning. And it may be more than one thing. And many times it involves reversing an imbalance or a deficiency or some other factor, lifestyle factor, whatever it may happen to be. But we start reversing or renormalizing. When we were young, we probably didn't have a problem with weight. Most of us teenage years, most of the people I knew, very few of them were overweight. There was a few, but as I get toward the end of today's presentation, we'll be talking about a couple hormones in the body that some people have a little bit more of, others don't have as much. And when you do that, you have a tendency to put on maybe that extra 10 or 15 pounds, or you eat exactly the same amount of stuff and you remain skinny as can be forever. And being skinny is not necessarily the best thing. You want to be healthy. The health is far better than just looking good. You can look good and have a very unhealthy body. You can have a few extra inches around the gut and still be as healthy as can be. So the appearance is not a guarantee of the health. But when we start accumulating that fat around our belly, and there's reasons for that to happen. And the first thing we start with is let's assume that everything in our body is normal. Then the first thing whatever we put in our mouth, the food. And so as I take something in my mouth, that begins our digestive process. As you start chewing the food, it mixes with the saliva. That's the very front end of all the chemical reactions that's going to happen in our body. And as that food gets into our stomach and then progresses into the rest of the body, we talked about last week how the gallbladder provides bile and how the liver provides enzymes. And as you're going through the normal things, the pancreas makes insulin. All those things are happening. But as we get older, they just don't quite seem to happen with the same degree of efficiency. And so as we look at what are we eating, typically for the fat management program, we're looking at two things. Number one is the dietary fat we eat, and number two are the carbohydrates. And so those are the two things we're going to concentrate on today. Dietary fats, our choices. If I offer you a hamburger, well, there's a certain amount probably of unsaturated fat in there, saturated fat. There's probably some grease in there, which means you have some extra vegetable oil that was frying in there. You have advanced glycation age products. You have a lot of things going on with regard to that. But those fats that come in there, if you are trying to eat healthy, let's say I'm having salmon rather than a burger. Okay, I'm having my omega-3s. I'm not having as many omega-6s. I'm having more monounsaturated rather than saturated. And depending on where your choice of foods are coming from, just because it's a saturated fat, if it's a plant saturated fat, probably a pretty good thing. Your coconut oil, for example, it's a medium chain triglyceride, but they call it a saturated fat. And it got a bad rap for a long time because it was a saturated fat. And therefore, it had to be just as bad as the beef and everything else out there that was saturated. But when you have the right ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, usually a 1-to-1, no more than 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3. The body, those are essential fatty acids. We need them. We get them from our foods. If we don't have them, we have problems. But when you start having too many omega-6s to omega-3s, now we have a serious problem because that begins the inflammatory process at the cellular level, and chronic low-level inflammation, cellular, is the genesis of nearly every disease that we know of. So as we make our choices, it's not the fat that we're eating. We use that right away for our energy, but it's the quantity of that fat. So when we're looking at calories are a lot more in the fat than they are in anything else. So as a result, I want to have a real control over what I'm actually taking in. If I'm having a little bit of carbohydrates, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fats, I want to be able to control the quantity and the quality of both. And so our choices are absolutely critical with regard to any kind of fat management or weight management or appearance that we want to have. Those are the things that become our lifestyle. But we need consistency. You can't eat healthy 3 days a week and then just everything goes to off kilter the rest of the week. So consistency, regardless of any part of life, we need that. But you need the good quality consistency, not the things that have a tendency to create problems. Okay, let's talk a little bit about fats. We're talking about carbohydrates. If you're having a simple sugar, it's going to spike literally just almost instantly. Your blood glucose levels instantly comes rushing in. It's going to try to shove as much of that glucose into the cells as possible. And you just get a tsunami of insulin with a simple sugar. Now, if you choose the complex carbohydrates, a baked potato, rice, something along those lines, long grain wild rice, as opposed to some of the more conventional. If it takes you longer to cook something, that's probably a healthier option. If you can get 2-minute white rice out of the microwave, probably not the best decision you made that day. But you can go to high glycemic index and look and see. I think the number one thing on the index is one slice of white bread is probably the highest amount of blood sugar spike that you're going to get. Everything else is some level in reference to that. But if you're not familiar with high glycemic foods, Dr. Google, Dr. YouTube has remarkable archives of information out there. Just Google high glycemic foods to see what you're eating. Google low glycemic foods and see what maybe you can substitute some of that stuff for. But if you're going to have an insulin spike, You want it to be gradual over time so that you're not just inundating everything in your body. If you have a couple, 3 or 4 candy bars and a couple of Cokes and some French fries and whatever, your spike levels are just going crazy. So you need to calm that down and look at exactly what you're eating. One of the things that we left last week was insulin resistance. When it takes more insulin to put the same amount of glucose, amount of energy into a cell for later for our energy uses, now we start having a problem because that extra insulin creates just all sorts of problems in the body. I recommended last week that you become a master at reading labels. I'm doing the same thing again this week. Look at the label. What is it telling you? The biggest thing people miss is how many servings are in this thing. So if the label says 10 grams of fat, 4 grams of carbohydrates, and whatever it may happen to say, but it says 4 servings per whatever that container is, most people don't realize that if I eat the whole thing, oh, you just had 10 grams of fat and 4 grams of carb. No, you had 4 times that. You had 40 grams of fat and 16 grams of carbohydrates. You need to understand exactly what you don't need to understand. It's one of those things that makes our lives a whole lot easier if we become better adapted at our health. And one of those things is what's on the label? What does it really mean to me? And if I pick something up, how do I compare things? And I do this all the time. It's something I like, even the rare times I get medicines, that's one of the things I do is I go in there and I read the labels, the fine print. Just one of those things that I do. But anyway, learn to read the labels and what is it telling you and how does it affect your health? Okay, we can talk about insulin resistance. We kind of, that was toward the last slide last week. And if you know a cause of insulin resistance, let's go ahead and try to reverse it, because these things are when it's going crazy, 2,000 milligrams for whatever that particular quantity is. But as you get to be a teenager, maybe it's down to about 1,500. You're in your 20s, it's down around 1,000. You get in your 60s and 70s, now you're down under 100. You get, and later in life, everything goes down. So I had it here a long time ago. Now I barely have it here. And the human growth hormone is what was in charge of everything happening, getting everything taken care of. So as you get older, the human growth hormone goes down almost to zero and chaos reigns. And so all of a sudden, age-related diseases, inflammation, oxidative stress, all sorts of things are taking place. Now we can control some of those, but human growth hormone certainly gives us the ability to control a lot of things that are associated with our older age. Now, how do you fix that? Well, probably the easiest way is to fast. That means water only, unsweet iced tea, unsweet tea in general. But fasting will increase the human growth hormone faster than anything else out there. A specific kind of exercise, high intensity interval training. I run 100-yard dashes. That's a high intensity interval training. You run 100-yard dash as fast as you can. You walk back to the starting line, you run it again. That's high intensity and it's interval. That increases, but a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't fast. There's a lot of things out there, but there are issues that we can take and fix. But those are 2 of them. Another one that causes our aging is our telomere length. At the end of each DNA, there's a little tip, and that tip is twisted together. And that cap on the end of that twisted DNA it's a caplet if it were a shoelace, but it's what they call a telomere. And every time that cell replicates, divides in half, you lose a little bit of that cap. And then by the time the cell replicates enough times, the cap is gone, the cell's dead, you're not going to get any more replication. Well, if you're a smoker, you're overweight, you have inactive lifestyle, a lot of other issues, stressed out, instead of losing that much telomere length each time the cell replicates, you're losing a little bit more. And you're just kind of accelerating the aging process for that cell, which limits our overall age. So the telomere length, nutrition is probably one of the best things to control that, balanced nutrition, and a more moderate exercise, something literally walking, maybe a slight more intense exercise than that, but not much more. But those are the things that we can do to kind of reverse the aging process. And I have a book out there that I wrote a while back called Results Matter When You Want to Lose Weight. No, that's my book for losing weight. My other book, and I don't see it right now, The Secret to Longevity, Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging. And I go into a lot of detail at the very end of this slide program. I'll show you a picture of that book. But there's a lot of things out there that we can do. Excess fat, obesity. When you have that excess fat, particularly around the gut, that fat almost becomes another organ. And in reality, because the fat is there, it's also going to be sending signals to the brain. Toward the last slide today, I'm going to be talking about a couple different things, leptin and adiponectin. Those two hormones are actually created in the fat, and they send signals to the brain. And so as we have excess fat, that actually makes it a lot harder for us to lose weight, because that excess fat is interfering with the communication process between our body and our brain, and the brain tells the body what to do. We've always heard, for as long as we can remember, you need to be more active. It gets more oxygen in the blood, it gets more oxygen to the brain, it's good for the heart. And when you're inactive, it increases your insulin resistance because there's nothing there to help get everything going along. What's reasonable? Start out with just walk around the house, walk around the block, get outside, see some sunshine, go drive to the park, walk around the park, whatever it is, do something. If you live in a place that has stairs, walk up and down the stairs a couple times. You go to the store, park a little bit further out. And so you get an extra 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of activity that you wouldn't normally have. But you got to start someplace. And walking is probably one of the best exercises you can do from a number of different reasons. Prescription drugs. There are some prescription drugs that have an effect on insulin resistance and your increased risk of diabetes or even obesity in general. And you can just go ahead and Google prescription drugs, insulin resistance. You'll probably find some things, statin drugs, beta blockers. There's a few others out there. If you're on that, then maybe your current prescription medicine is causing a problem that's increasing your insulin resistivity, and you're not able to lose weight with the same degree of efficiency you did before. Talk to your doctor about it. Talk to your pharmacist about it. There may be a substitute that's not creating that same thing that will solve the problem that you originally put on the drugs for. But that's something just to be aware of, and it's a concern. Let's move on to the next one. Stress. Adrenaline and cortisol both increase insulin resistance. If you're stressed out, and a lot of us just love to hang on to that stress and just not let go of it. Somebody did something wrong and we're intensely, let it go. Just let it go, let it go, let it go. Adrenaline, cortisol, there are ways to reduce levels in the body. Again, Dr. Google, Dr. YouTube will tell you many different ways of doing that. But if you're on prescription meds, don't just start doing something without talking to your doctor first, because there may be a reason why you're not doing something. But stress relief can be something as simple as a smile. That will de-stress a lot of things instantly. Laughter. There are so many things out there. Meditation, just exercise. There's a lot of things out there that will reduce stress, and they should be done several times a day. It's not one of those on a Sunday afternoon, well, let me go ahead and I'll meditate, and that's it for the week. Breathing exercises, pranayamas, there's just a lot of different things you can do, but it needs to become consistent in your life. It needs to be a lifestyle that you're doing. We know that hormone imbalance will cause a problem with a lot of issues in the body. One of them happens to be testosterone for both men and women. If it's low, then it's going to cause an insulin resistance. You do have options. Google, how do I increase testosterone naturally? Well, the first thing they're going to tell you is eat a more healthy diet, exercise, umpty. They're going to tell you the same things that everybody's told you forever. Eat right, exercise right, sleep right, etc. Those same things that have been the standard for health correct a lot of these individual problems. And so as you have awareness, maybe you go down and you get a blood test, I got low in testosterone. They'll probably tell you at the same time, if you do this, this, and this, you'll raise it up naturally. I would rather go with a natural option than any kind of pill. High fructose, HFC, it's high fructose corn syrup. It's in almost everything. If it's in a package, in a jar, in a can, it doesn't matter. It probably has high fructose corn syrup. Our bodies are not adapted to having that much fructose at one time. Lots of issues with it. You take a Coke, probably not a big deal. A lot of it's there. It's going to spike the insulin. The liver treats it as a poison because it's not something that's common. Yeah, you can eat an apple, banana. There's a little bit of fructose in it, but not the same levels that you're getting in that corn syrup. But because it's so cheap, they don't have to put sugar. They can use this high fructose corn syrup. Instead, they make it cheaper, but it has a major effect. One of the effects is down the road is that fructose is going to drive down I think adiponectin, if I remember right, but it's going to have an effect on the hormones that control the communications between our body fat, and our brain. But that's one thing you can give up right away. If you can't cut back, if you can't give up, just cut back. Pour half of it in, throw the rest away, put it aside. At least start cutting in half whatever you're doing with your fructose, because that is a major inhibitor to a lot of things in our bodies. We talk about quality sleep, being able to go to sleep 7, 8, 9 hours, whatever the thing may be. Listen to your body. If you're tired, go to bed. I had this thing happen to me recently. I just kind of under the weather and nothing was really there, just kind of fatigued. And I'm not one to go to bed at 6 o'clock at night, but I actually felt so tired I couldn't keep my eyes open. I was in bed, and my wife says I was asleep before 6:30 p.m. and I slept until almost noon the next day. It's one of those things I rarely do, but you got to listen to your body. When you're tired and you have the ability to go to sleep, go to sleep. I know there's families, there's jobs, there's school, there's other things out there. I used to, doesn't matter what I used to have. Anyway, quality sleep, a lot of things are there to help you. What do you call it? You're tapping, emotional freedom techniques, EFT. Go to YouTube, EFT and sleep. If you're having a problem going to sleep, that's an option. There are other things that are out there too. But again, try to do a natural option with regard to any kind of sleep relief whatsoever. Okay, we're getting here toward the end of our program. Alcohol is one of those double-edged swords. A little bit, one glass of red wine actually has a lot of benefits. Now, some people don't know alcohol at all. But in some of the studies, they actually show, yeah, there is a little bit of benefit from that. But again, red wine is better than white wine. White wine's better than beer. It's better than vodka, whatever. But again, moderation in whatever you're doing. If it's one glass and it's every other night, just a weekend, whatever. But you don't want to sit down and go through 2 6-packs because you can. That alcohol is treated as a poison in the body. The body's going to stop whatever it's doing and treat that, get rid of it, get it removed from the body. And that may take a while. If you've ever had a big meal at night, a lot of alcohol, and you wake up at 3:07 in the morning and you're wide awake and you're, what's going on? It's because your body finally processed out all of that alcohol, the aldehyde that it made. And now all of a sudden it's going back into digestion because it put everything on hold. Now your body's going to digest the food you had for 6 or 8 hours ago. And so there's a lot of things that you can do. Smoking is one that actually gets into the cells and creates a problem between our insulin, our energy sources, and everything else. It's a cellular level problem. Again, it's like anything else. Cut back if you can't stop. Seek a lot of professional advice in that one. There's probably a lot of things that you can do, but unless you start looking and making a decision, and just making a decision to lose weight, to go exercise, to stop smoking, we can't. 99% of us can't make a decision to go cold turkey on anything, regardless of what it is. There are things that are out there. So the more you're aware of things, the more your education level increases, the more things mean to you. And when you have a more definite why in your life, okay, let me try this and see how much it works. Toxins get right in there from everything, and the foods we eat, the air we breathe, the clothes we wear, the soaps we wear, underarm deodorants, shampoo, literally everything we have around us is a chemical toxin, and it gets in the body. It disrupts so many different aspects, but it really affects our liver more than anything else. If we end up overindulging in alcohol, we're going to end up with cirrhosis of the liver. If you overindulge in fructose, you're going to end up with what's called non-fatty liver disease. They call it non-fatty alcohol liver disease, but the alcohol, it treats the liver as the same thing, but it's fructose. The same thing, toxins. We end up too many toxins. We have some major liver because the body never has a chance to process everything that it needs to do because it's constantly invaded by everything that's there. I use coconut oil for lotion on my hand, underarm deodorant. I find coconut oil, you can buy it in the pills and eat it, drink it. If I drink it, I like it a little bit warmer than cold. It seems to have a more pleasant taste if I'm just putting it on a tablespoon and drinking it. But I look for anything with the least level of processing. So the toxins, if you're buying something, if it's been cold filter pressed versus all the rest of the processing is there, every single process adds a little more toxin to it. So that's something you need to be aware of. 100 years ago, doctors treated gestational diabetes with chromium, and it worked because the fetus was taking chromium from the mother. But you look at it nowadays and they kind of go out of their way to say, no, we don't have any evidence of that. There's no studies on it. Well, that's true. They can't literally say that because there's no studies. But if you look at a lot of people, I mean, I've mentioned this in several presentations I've given over time, and I've had people come back to me and says, hey, I took one chromium pill every day, and in 2 weeks I cut my insulin back in half. And I said, did you talk to your doctor? He says, no, more than one person. And I say, you really need to coordinate that because you're disrupting a function of the body that you have under control, and you just arbitrarily throw something into the mix. So it may be that you can, in fact, use chromium, vitamin D, and some other things in there to control some of that stuff. On our last presentation on fat management, I'm going to go through a whole list of things that have some aspect of blocking fat, burning fat, unreleasing fat. There's just a lot of things out there. Most of them are natural, and we'll talk about those. But one of my favorite things is ghrelin, leptin, and adiponectin. I didn't think I wanted to get involved in the three of these with regard to having fat come out of a fat cell, but part of the connection between our brain and telling our bodies to release that fat is the communications that go back and forth. Ghrelin is a hormone, like some people call it a peptide. When you get a hunger pang, that feeling that you're really hungry and you can feel it in your stomach, your gut, that's ghrelin. It's created in your gut, in your stomach, and it tells the brain, hey, I'm empty. I've been empty for a while. I need some more food. And so the brain's going to say, okay, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and start eating. It's ghrelin, 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 is basically regulates our appetite. And as such, that ghrelin, when it says eat, we get this need. Now you wake up in the morning and you may have a need to eat breakfast, but that need could be you're just dehydrated. And need maybe it's a habit. You're not really hungry, but it's a habit. But it may be that ghrelin is really and truly a strong factor in your life. Well, the more you kind of push away, 2 hours later, that feeling is gone. So as you go into a fast, you're going to find out that your hunger pangs get less and less and less and less. And it's just one of those things your body is attenuating those signals. Leptin, Leptin, leptin is something that's created in the fat, and it tells the body, hey, got enough down here. I'm happy. I'm satiated. And what happens is as we start getting more and more fat, we start getting more and more things. And just like we have insulin resistance, we have leptin resistance. And again, it creates a lot of problems. There are some natural things we can do, just like there's natural things we can do for almost everything we're talking about. Adiponectin, it's one of those ones that if I'm larger than somebody else, I have a lot more fat than someone else, I have a lot more adiponectin than somebody else. My adiponectin is part of my insulin sensitivity. When I have large amounts of it, I can actually burn fat more efficiently. It's a hormone that really addresses insulin sensitivity. It decreases insulin resistance. But when you have too much, all of a sudden the communication going to the brains is just overwhelming. It's a tsunami effect. The brain can't adjust, and now all of a sudden it stops. And so even though you have the right things, you have too much of the right things, it's not paying attention. There's these things called Carb blockers, carb absorbers, fat blockers, lots of things out there right now in the industry that you can buy natural or in a pill form. Uh, Unless there's a real reason to be taking them, there's so many other options you can do first naturally. And there's some natural carb blockers, and I've taken them in the past, glucomannan for one that I can think of. There's probably a couple other ones out there that if I thought about it long enough, I would be able to just pop right off the top of my head. But again, beware that just taking a pill to take care of a problem that's been existing in your life for a long time, the pill is not addressing the cause of the problem. It may be taking care of a short-term issue right that minute, but then you get to take more later on. Why not address the cause of the problem at the front end and gradually let that other one go by? But toward the last session, in the number 6 session on fat management, I'll be talking a lot more about natural options with regard to blocking fat, blocking carbs, and things along those lines. So next week, we're going to talk about what causes fat to burn. How do we actually start burning some of that fat that we have? That fat didn't happen overnight. We can't expect to lose it overnight. But again, awareness, that's where these programs are for. Education, that's the next level up. After that, it's action. But before taking action, especially if you're on any kind of prescription meds, consult your doctor first. Now, earlier I mentioned Longevity Secrets for Healthy Aging, my book that talks about what are the 2 major causes of aging and what can you do about it. There may be 3 things you're doing right, 10 things you're doing wrong. And again, it's one of those things that you do have options. All this stuff is available on my website or on Amazon. The Joy of Ageless Health is my best-selling book on Amazon, and it goes into the details of how you can actually improve your health as you get older. And with that, I am going to conclude, Dr. Jacqueline, for today's event, and I look forward to you next week. Again, red.olaughlin, Talking Heads, USA Global TV and Radio Network, and thank you very much for joining me.